Hello everyone and welcome back. We will pick up from where we left last time and continue from there. Before we start, just a quick question. My last video, the part 1, was almost more than an hour long. So I just wanted to ask for your feedback. Is it too much? Do you prefer to watch longer videos or do you want to see a small bite-sized videos, maybe 20-30 minutes each? Do let me know in the comments below and I will adjust the next parts accordingly. Anyways, this is going to be a multi-part series, and given the size of the application and the kind of the things or the number of things that we have to cover as part of building this application, I assume it is going to be at least 8 to 10 parts. So do let me know in the comments if you want to have shorter videos or less but longer videos. I'm okay either ways. So let us continue back. So we created a basic infrastructure for our application. We have the main application. We just created the folder structures. We added a frameworks project as well. This is where some of the common things which are useful in this application as well as other future applications will go over here. It is always a good practice to have some common infrastructure such as your converters, your helpers, some common services that you want to use in a common framework project and reuse it multiple times across different projects. So the first thing that we will do, so what we did last time under resources, we added a few of our own fonts. So we added Fira Sans. Let's hook them up in our Maui program. So I'm going to go over here and let's change it to Fira Sans -light.ttf. So we'll be using the light font and I want to refer to it as a regular font. I'm not using the actual regular font as a regular font. I'm using the lighter font as a regular font. And then I also need one for my medium font. And for this purpose, I will be using the actual medium font. So I'm just going to call it medium font. Now, at this point, let's just quickly run the application and see how it looks like. Let me kick off the application. In fact, let me fix this. So here comes our simulator, and you can see we have the application with the dark background, the one we put in our app.xaml. So we set our page background to be 262626, and then we had a common style for all our content pages to use this page background color. Now, one of the big problems that you see over here immediately is that the status bar on iOS is in the same, almost a similar color, which is black. Ideally, since we have a darker background, we should change this to light color. So that we can quickly fix if I go to my platforms folder under iOS in info.plist. Let me edit it with Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to bring in a simple setting which will change this color for me. So let me just put it. I will just add the UI view controller base status bar appearance and I will change it to false. Let me save this. And now if I go back and run the application, you will see that we have the white color text in the status bar. So let me close this and let me close this. So here you go. So this looks much better now. Now what we will do today, we'll try to complete almost everything in the frameworks project that we will require for the purpose of this application, but we will keep on building on this as and when we proceed and progress with the application. So last time we added one string extensions method. We will add another one for list extensions, which is going to be used for mostly enumerable types. So let me clean it up. I'm going to bring in this class and then I will explain what this is. You don't want to see me typing everything. So this is a static class called list extensions. It has a few methods. Let's start with the method at the bottom. So this is a for each method on IEnumerable, which takes in an action predicate. And for each of the items in our IEnumerable, it will perform this action. So for each where item in this enumeration, call this action on this item. Then what we also have is we have the add range method. So depending on your list or your observable collection, you can add the list of new items, and you can also specify. Let me show you. So clear first is false. You can also specify if you want to first clear your observable collection and then add the items in the list. So simply, I'm just saying if the user has asked for clearing the list first, then clear this collection, and then for each of the items, add it to this observable collection. So you can see over here, this is exactly the method that we are using over here. And then I also have a randomize helper method, which will allow me to take an IEnumerable and randomize the list. You may have a requirement in many times where you get the list, but you want to display it on the screen in a random way, rather than in the order in which you are getting the list. So this is a set of helper methods for list extensions. Let me go ahead and remove this from the extension method and add it to our global usings. Now next, I'm going to create a couple of converters which we are going to use in our application. So let me go and add a converter for inverse Boolean converter. Let me clean up. I wish Visual Studio automatically does this for all the new classes rather than we doing this manually. Let me bring in the code and then I will explain what this is. So this is basically a simple converter which will take a Boolean variable or an object, and then it will inverse it. If you get true, it will return you false. If you get false, it will return you true. So what are the use cases? Consider a scenario where you are displaying something on the screen. Let's say it is a list of items on a shopping application, and you want to show or enable the button only when you have items in stock. For that, you do not need a converter. You can simply go on your button or any of your Visual XAML component. You can say is visible equals to, let's say, bind it to your view models is available in stock Boolean property. That will work fine. What if you want to do an inverse? Take an example where you have an icon on the screen where you ask the user to like or dislike, let's say in this particular case, like or dislike the video. So if the user has already liked the video, you do not want to show the like icon. Instead, you want to show the dislike icon. So that is where we can say that we show this if video is liked, then let's say our property is video liked. It's a Boolean variable which can be true or false. True means that the user has liked the video. So you want to show the like button when the video liked is false. That is where we can bring in this converter and it will show us the inverse. So it's a simple converter. All it is doing is just negating the value that is being passed to it. Okay, let me clean it up and add it to my global usings. Next, we are going to create another helper converter, very helpful converter, which is going to be extremely useful for us. Let me actually create one first, and then I will explain how and where we use it. So this is again a very simple converter. It is called enumeration contains element converter. Many a times you have a list of objects and you want to say display a button based on if this list contain any items. Take an example of a shopping cart. So only if this shopping cart contains some shopping items, then you want to show, enable, or make the uh, proceed to checkout button visible. So how do you do that? Traditionally, what we have been doing, we will create another property in our view model, which will expose whether the shopping cart is visible or, sorry, there are any items in the list or not. What this does, basically, it just takes the list itself and returns back whether there are any items in the list or not. As simple as that. So this is an extremely helpful function which we can use in many of our applications, and we will use it in this application as well. So with this done, let's go back and we will create a base view model. So you recall we created an MVVM folder in the frameworks project. At least in almost all of my applications, I have a requirement wherein I need some basic properties in all of my view models, such as what is the title, if the view model is busy performing some action, if I am displaying something on the screen, let's say a loading indicator, what is the text that needs to be displayed on the screen. If an error occurred, I need to signal that what is the image that I want to display as part of that. So for that purpose, usually what I do, I create individual properties in each of the view models or in the or as a base view model in my application. But since I'm using it across applications, I would create it as a base model over here, base view model over here, and use it across all of my apps. So let me call it view model base. I'm going to make it partial because we will be making use of MVVM Community Toolkit package to reduce all our boilerplate control code. So I'm going to inherit this from observable collection, observable object rather. Let me bring in the namespace. So this is where we are using the community toolkit.mvvm.component model. So what this will allow us to do is something like this. Let me bring in the code first, and then I will show you what do we have. So here I have a property for my title. I have a property for is busy. If the view model is performing an action, loading text, we will see all of these in action when we build the actual application. Data loaded, has the data been loaded via the view model? This is extremely useful when you only want to display information on the screen only after the view model has processed its work. It has finished processing. If there was an error that occurred as part of this processing, what was the error message? What is the error image? So what we do is we make use of MVVM toolkit from community toolkit. This allows me to reduce all the iNotify property changed code along with the public getters and setters that I need. So behind the scene, it is creating public string title with a capital T with a get and a set. And if required to notify any other property or raise any other property changed, I can do that with the help of attributes itself. That's the reason we added partial to this class, because using source generators, it is going to inject all this code. Then another interesting method that I have added, it's a virtual method. We are just calling it on navigated to, passing in some parameters, and it is not doing anything at the moment. I will show you how useful this will be when we build a framework for our application where we will have a base page framework, and as soon as we hook a view model declaratively, not using code, to our view, automatically it will go ahead and call this method, and in this method we can perform whatever initialization we want to do through our view model. And then I have created a helper method which we will be using very heavily in our applications. This is going to use or set the indicators for processing. So the moment you start processing, you just want to call this with the parameter true, and it will set all these properties. Is busy, it will make it true so that we can show our spinning, let's say, loading indicator. It will change the data loaded to false, so that we do not show anything on the UI or we hide it on the UI. Is error state to false because there is no error yet. Otherwise, at the time of finishing, we will clear off our loading text and reset our is busy flag. We will use this very heavily in all of our view models. So this is pretty much it on the framework side. Just last bit, we will go ahead, remove it and add it to our global usings. So we can close our frameworks project. For a long time, we are not going to need this. Now, let's come back to our main application. What I'm going to do, under the helpers method, I'm going to create a service helpers class, and I will tell you where we are going to use this. Let me just bring in the class first and explain what it does and how it will be useful. By the way, this is the class, or this is the helper which I borrowed from David Ottenau's Weather 21 application. It's an extremely helpful helper method. So first of all, I'm declaring a public static property, which will expose the service provider for this particular application. Depending on which framework or which operating system you are running on, it will get you the list of or this particular service provider from your main application. Once we have this, this is a simple method that we are exposing, which will allow us to get the service from the DI container and use it in our application. So all it is doing, just calling the get service with the interface or the service type, implementation type that you want, and then it will return you an instance of that service, whether it is singleton or transient or scope. It will respect all of that and get you an instance of that service. We will use this to auto wire or auto hook our view models with our views. In fact, one of the things I did forget, if I go to my frameworks model, frameworks project, I need to add some base objects for my user interface. And I will explain what these are. When we build our base user interface in our YouTube application, we will make heavy use of that. So I'm going to create a couple of enumerations. So one enum is content display mode. It only has two available values. One is no navigation bar and the other is navigation bar. So what does it mean? In majority of the applications that you have seen, almost all of them with a few exceptions, we will be using navigation bar. What it means, when the application runs, at the top you have, let me run this application just to show you. So in all the applications, we have this top part, the status bar and the navigation bar. So and then our content starts below that. But in some of the applications, you may have seen that your content extends into the status bar as well, especially if you are looking into some applications which are working very heavily with images. That is where you will see that over here. Let me show you. In fact, I did use it in one of my own applications. Maybe I can show you a quick image of what I mean by that. Yeah, here you go. So if you look this particular application, you see the image is extending all the way into the navigation bar as well as into the status bar. So this enum is what we can use for this purpose. I know I would have rather called it extend into status bar, but hey, we are all learning. Maybe next time I can change that. The next one, I'm going to create another enum. I'm going to call it page mode. It is again going to be a simple one. Let's clean up. This is a big hassle. Visual Studio needs to do something about this. So I'm creating a page mode enum. It has 4 possible values: none, menu, navigate, and model. So let me show that with an example. So this is one of my applications as well, which is on the app stores. So you see when we are on the main page, on the home page, we see a hamburger menu, right? If I navigate to another page, I see a back button, and I can press the back button, come back over here. If I press on the hamburger menu, then you can have, or you can show this side menu or whatever you want to do when you press on this hamburger menu. Another thing is so we have covered menu and navigate. The last one, or the second last, is model. Let's say if I click on contact us. So you see in this particular example, it opens up a model page. So instead of the back icon or the hamburger menu, we are seeing a close button. And even the behavior you see is quite different. So it is popping up from the bottom, whereas the navigation is coming in or sliding in from the right. And the last one is none. None means that you do not want to show any of these icons. No hamburger menu, no back icon, no close icon. So this is what we will use for designing our base pages as well. It's a framework that we will build, which will make it easier for us to build consistent UI across applications. Okay, now we can close this unless I remember something else. Let's go back to our models and let us start creating some models to be used in our application. I'm going to create a model called constants. This is something that I usually have in almost all of my applications, and I prefer to have the same things almost everywhere unless there is something additional which is required. So let me show that what it is. So it's a constants class which has some properties, or rather variables. What is my application name? So I know my application name in this case is tube player. This is something that we can use across the board in our applications rather than hard coding the application name everywhere. Maybe an email address that I want to use for displaying in different places, or maybe for popping up messages, or asking the user to contact us for support. Let me just put it tubeplayer@xgenoapps.com. What is my application ID? I'm just going to give it an application ID, and I'll explain later where we are going to use this. So let me just call it xgeno.tubeplayer.app. App service URL and the application key, API key, we'll come to in a bit. And then I have defined some durations, unsigned integers, we have micro duration of 100 millisecond, we have long duration of 1.2 seconds, and extra long duration of say 1.8 seconds, medium duration of little over half a second. During our when showing pages or showing elements, sometimes we may want to use animations in the app. It is always a good idea that you keep consistent when you are showing animations. First of all, you should not be showing animations. Let's say you are fading in the content on your screen. You should not be spending or taking more than 2 seconds as a best practice while you are bringing in the content. Or let's say you are sliding in something from the right or something from the bottom, or you are translating an object from one place to another place on the screen. So this will help us, or this will define certain durations that we can use. So for some quick animations, we can use micro or small durations, which is 100 or 300 milliseconds. For some long ones, we can use 1.2 seconds. For some very, very long ones, we can use 1.8 seconds. There is no official guidance on this, but if you follow any of the UI designs and patterns and any recommendations, everyone suggests that you should not have any animation running for more than 2 seconds on the screen. Okay, so with this, let's go back and try to fill in the details for our API service URL and the API key. You recall we mentioned we'll be getting all the data from YouTube API from Google. So for that, the very first thing we need to do, we need to go to the API reference. And this is the YouTube API Explorer. Let me go and show you the same thing which we were looking at last time. So we have the search API. Here we can ask for, say, a snippet, and we can search for a particular query. Where is my queue? Maybe I want to search for iPhone 14, which is coming up very soon. And then let me execute this. And what it will bring me, in this particular case, 5 top videos related to iPhone 14. So the first one is iPhone 14, everything we need to know. If you click on the show code, this is where it will show you if you have to execute it via curl, how this is to be executed. So this is the URL which is hit every time, and search is the endpoint. In fact, if you run any of these APIs, you will notice that your base URL is always this. So we are going to copy this and put it in our API service URL. We do not want to hard code it everywhere in our service or while making any of the calls. That's why I'm putting it in my constants class. This is something which we can reuse across the whole of the application. The next thing, right now, you notice since we are using their API Explorer service, so we do not need to provide any API key. But when we make these API calls, we will need to provide the API keys. So where do we get this API keys from? For that, you need to go to Google Developer Console. You can simply go search for Google Developer Console, go to console.developers.google.com, and then you will be taken to this page. First, we need to create credentials for our YouTube API. I have already created one, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to create a new. I will choose API key. It will go ahead and create an API key for me. Give it a while. I am going to copy this API key and paste it in my constants API key variable. Now I can safely close this. Just a couple of things before you proceed further. You click on edit, give it a meaningful name. So let's call it API key for YouTube clone application. This is just a helpful name which will help you refer back to it. And what are the restrictions? We want to restrict this API only to use the YouTube API version 3. We do not want this API key to be used for anything else. So once this is done, I can save this. And you can see over here, even the name has been changed. So we are pretty much done with this. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio. With this constants out of the way, what we now need to do, we need to create a service to connect to this YouTube API using this API key and fetch the data. So how can we do this? Again, I'll be using dependency injection for injecting this service in all of my view models where required. So for that, I will first create an interface. I'm going to create an interface and call it iAPI service. Let's leave this empty for now. We are not going to put anything over here. And then in my services, I'm going to create the actual service. I'm going to call this YouTube REST service, or let's call it just YouTube service. And I'm going to inherit this from my iService, iAPI service interface that I just created. And then I'm also going to inherit this from REST service base class, which we created in our framework model. RESTs. One thing that we need to do in our project, I need to go and I need to add the reference. And I need to include this frameworks project in this reference. Now I can, let me just go, what did we call? REST service space. Yeah. So it has brought in this framework. If you recall, what did we have in this REST-based service? It is basically a simple base class or an abstract class which we can use to define all of our services. In every API call, there is a lot of heavy lifting that you need to do when it comes to fetching the data, setting the headers, uh, converting the JSON string response from string to your object models. So this base class that we created actually does all of that heavy lifting for you, including the caching. If you want to cache the data as well, and if you want to do, if you want to post anything, if you want to delete anything using the endpoints, you can do all of that. So this is a one-time activity that we did, REST service based. And now in our application, it will make our life extremely, extremely easy. So at the moment, it is complaining that it does not have the same constructor as the interface. So I'm going to fix this. It is not helping me. That's fine. So I can manually do this. What did we do? What is the constructor we have? We need to provide these. And then I can say base, pass in my connectivity and cache barrel. It should come before any interfaces, correct? Here you go. So this is our base YouTube service. Now, before we go and add anything into this service, we need to bring in the models, the data that we are going to download from APIs. So let me go back. Let's come over here. So let's have a look at this APIs. What are we going to do? So there are a few things which are going to happen. For example, the first thing, it requests the part to be snippet because we want to get the details. And bare minimum, you can go through the documentation. The bare minimum, we need a query string which we will pass, which will search for this text that we have provided. In our case, it is going to be iPhone 14. And when we ran this, let's run it again, or you can see it only brought in 5 results. Maybe we want to bring in a little bit more. Let's say max result says 10. So we want to bring in 10 results. Now if I execute this, you will notice that we have received 10 results. So what happens after the 10 results? Of course, you want more. Usually the good practice is you have, or you should implement, infinite scrolling. So first you show the 10 videos on the screen, and then when you scroll down and when you are at the very bottom, let's say the last item or the second last item, you start fetching the next 10 items from the API service and show those 10 items. That is why we will be using observable collection to display the list of videos on the screen. We can add more items to it dynamically. And then further, as you scroll down, when you reach towards the end, you want to bring in the next 10 results. So how do you get the next 10 results? Again, your API in this case helps you. You notice in your API, it returns you the next page token. First time when we executed, we did not pass in the page token. So if I come over here, you have the page token. You did not pass anything, so it returned you the first 10 results. Now this time around, if I pass in the page token which is returned as part of this API call and execute this again, it is going to bring me the next 10 results, basically the second page. And then it will give me another next page token which I can use for the next API call. So you can see there are total of 1 million results, and it is only showing me 10 results in this case. So this time around, the 11th result that came back is iPhone 14 series, what to expect, etc. And it has another new page token. If I go and provide this page token this time and run this, this is going to give me results from number 21 to 30. So if I go back to the show code, this is the query that we need to provide. Okay, so let's actually go back to our response. This is the JSON string. We need to convert it into an object model that we can use. So let me copy this whole thing, and I will use a service called, or a website called JSON to C#. Of course, you can use QuickType.io or any of the other service to convert your JSON objects to C# classes. But in my case, I'm going to use this service. I'm going to paste in all my response over here, and then I will set some properties. I'm only interested in use JSON property name. So that, have a look at this. This is the channel title, which is starting with a small c, but in our models, it is always a good idea to use uppercase, lowercase letters. So we should have C capital and T capital and so on. So I'm going to tick this, and then I'm going to click on convert. It is going to generate these classes for me. And let me go back to the channel title, and I can show you how it looks like when it is created. Here you go. So this is the channel title, and it will use JSON property name channel title. In our case, since we are using system.json.text or system.text.json, we decided to click on this use JSON property name. If you are using Newtonsoft JSON, I would recommend that you click on add JSON property instead. So instead of saying JSON property name, it will just have JSON property. So let's go back to this. And usually in this case, root class is the one which is returned, which gives you the main result. So let me go back over here and look at the result. So the root object of this is called root in our object model. It has kind, it has e tag, next page token, previous page token, region code. it has page info, which is a sub-object which has two properties, total results and the results per page. And then it has a list of items. And each of the items it has kind, e-tag, another ID subproperty, snippet, subproperties. You get the idea. So what we are going to do, we are now going to move this to our code. So I'm going to go back and create a new model. I'm going to call these or put these in a common class, YouTube models. I do not need this. I'm going to remove this and then I'm going to paste in whatever I received from the response. Now let's do a bit of cleanup. So let's always start with, again, this is something that either you can use it as such, but it is not very readable going forward or easy to maintain. So I would rather suggest you change it. So this is the root class. I would rather call it video search result. Yeah, video search result. Now look at the information that we received back. What you have to decide what all information is really useful to you in the context of your application. Look at this, the kind or the e tag, or maybe in this case, the region code or the previous page token. Is it something which is really useful in your application? Are you going to use this? At least I'm not going to use for the purpose of this application. So I can maybe go ahead and delete the kind and the e tag. I do not need this. I do need the next page token. I am not using the previous page token because I don't want to go back. I already have this information. I don't need the region code. I do need the page info in case I want to display how many items are there in the screen, or maybe not. And then I need the list of the items. So let's bring in this page info first, one thing at a time. So let me bring in the page info. So let's keep it as page info, total results. Yeah, maybe it might be helpful. I may want to display on the screen that total of 530,000 videos found, and currently displaying how many pages or how many videos. And then we have this list of items. If you look at this item, let me bring in this item over here first. This is what contains my actual videos which are returned. Now, I would rather not call them item. I would rather call it a YouTube video. Let's give it a proper name. Again, same thing, you need to see what all information you want. I'm not interested in the kind or the e tag for my application, at least. I do want to know the video ID because when I navigate to the detailed page of the videos, I need this ID. And then the snippet, which will have the details such as your video title, the channel title, when it was published on, etc. So I do need that. So I can now go and fix this over here. So the next item that I have over here is my snippet. Let me go and bring in my snippet class. By the way, you will notice I'm spending some time over here. This is just to explain to you the thought process, how you build your models and what all cleanup you need to do, because there will be some other cleanup that we will be doing. We already said that we are going to have the ID object, so I'm going to retain this as well. And again, in the ID, I do not need the kind object. I can remove that. So let's go back to our snippet class. What all information is going to be useful in our snippets? Published at, I definitely need. Yes, I want to know when my video was published at, so I can display 2 days ago, 5 days ago, 3 years ago, etc. Channel ID, I will need. I'll tell you why I will need that channel ID. It is for a particular reason. I need the title. I want to show what is the title of my video. I will need a description. I will need the thumbnails, yes. And Channel title, yes, I'll need to display that this is from this particular channel, the name of the channel. Live broadcasting content, I probably do not need. Publish time, I do not need to be very accurate in my application to show that this application was published on this date time, this date at this particular time, because we'll be converting this to a much human readable format, such as 2 days ago or 5 minutes ago or 6 months ago, etc. We'll do that. So this is my snippet. Now, one of the things that I have over here is the thumbnails, which I returned. So if I go and let me bring in my thumbnails class. So we have this thumbnails, and it is bringing in default, medium, and high thumbnails. Now, one of the reasons why I'm spending so much time on this, if you look at each of these three classes that it has created, the default, the high, and medium, in this case, all of them have the same structure. Basically, let's go back to our data and let me explain to you. So if I go to the snippet, so you see the thumbnails, the default thumbnail, which is of size 120 by 90 pixels. And this is the URL for this thumbnail. The medium is 320 by 180. This is the URL. And the high is 480 by 360. And this is the URL. Now, this tool does not know that this is the same type. So it instead went ahead and created three different types for me. I do not need that. What I can do, I can remove these and I can change this default to something called a thumbnail. And then I can fix this over here. So instead of having three classes, I only need one class. So what is the information that we are getting out of this? We are getting the URL, we are getting the width and height. Depends if you want the width and height. In my case, I am not interested in the width and height. I only need the URL. So I'll delete everything. Maybe I also do not need the default thumbnail, that is too small in terms of the quality. If we go back, so the small one is 120 by 90. I will not be using it. But medium and high, yes, definitely I can make use of. So we will remove the default one. So here you have it. We have our models defined. Now, once our models are defined, let me save this, and yeah, let's do some cleanup and add it to our global usings. Okay, so let me go to my YouTube service, or first let me go to my API service, and this is where I'm going to define what are the different methods I'm going to expose as part of this service, because we are going to be using dependency injection. So we need this. I'm going to say I need task of video search result. That's what we call, right? And let's call it search videos. So I'm going to pass in a couple of parameters. One is the search query, what we want to search for. So if we go back over here, you notice when we were making the call, we passed in our query, and the other thing we are passing is the page token. Everything else can be defaulted. For example, this snippet, I do not need to specify this snippet part every time. I do not need to provide this max results 10 every time. That is in my application logic. The only thing which is changing depending on how the user interacts with the application is the query string, what he wants to search for, and the page number where we want to get the information from. So the other is going to be the next page token. And this can be left empty, especially when it is the first API call. So let me bring in the model, and yes, let's move it to my global usings. So this is our API service. And now if I go back, it is going to complain to me that I do not have, I have not implemented my interface. So let's actually go ahead and implement. The very first thing I want to do, I want to make sure that this is an async method. So this is our structure. It is taking search query and the next page token as the input parameter. Now this is where the beauty or the advantage of using this REST-based service that we created comes in. So let us create the endpoint that we want to hit. Let me call it resource URI, and I'm going to put in something over here. Let's go back and copy everything that we have over here. Okay, after our URL. So this is the endpoint we are going to hit, search. But one thing that I forgot is I need to specify to this base service what is my endpoint. You remember in our constants model, we did create this API service URL. We need to make use of this. So over here, I'm just going to say set base URL, and I'm going to provide constants dot, what did we call it? API service URL. API service URL. So this is what we need to do in our constructor. So this is a resource ID. Search part is equal to snippet. Max results equal to 10. And one thing that I did forget is there is a type. Let me close this so I can show you. There will be a type which can return you different content type. Yeah, type. So it can return you channels, playlists, and videos. So basically you can search for channels or playlists or videos. In our case, I only want to search for videos. So I'm going to add type is equal to video as well. So if I go back, provide my type, where is the type field? Yeah, type is video. It will only return me the videos. So now if I execute and see my code, you will notice it would have added and type is equal to video. So we are going to copy this as well. So max results is equal to 10 and type is equal to video. And then we have this page token. Let me keep this out for now. And query and the API key. So let's take all of these bit outside and we will fix it. Okay. So let's specify, we said that we need the key for sure. This is something which is hard coded. I do not want to, I'll put it in the beginning. And this is, I can bring it from my constants dot API key. So you recall we put in our API key from the developer console. So this is the API key, and the next thing is going to be and q equals to, so this is our query that we need to provide. So this query string, this query is going to be my search query. My search query. Now, one thing that you should do, you should always encode this, because if you are saying iPhone space 14, that space needs to be translated to either a plus or %20, or if you are using a single quote or a double quote, that needs to be translated into ampersand, QUOT, semicolon, and so on. So for that, what I can do, actually, I can say web dot, what is it called? Web utility. web utility dot URL encode, I believe, and I can pass in my search query. Let me bring in, so using system.net. So this is my main query. Now what I also want to do is, in case I have provided the next page token, I also want to pass in this page token, this parameter to my API call. So I can check not string dot is null or empty next page token. So if I have provided the next page token, I may want to pass in this information, and then I can say next page token, and this next page token will be next page token. So far looks good. So we have built our resource URI. Search, part is snippet, max result is equal to 10, type is equal to video, key is coming from our constants class, and query is equal to URL encoded search query, which is provided. And then optionally, if it is not the first call, which means the next page token was passed to us, we will pass this next page token the moment we hit, let's say, the last item when we are scrolling through on in our application. We'll pass in the next page token, and that is where it will inject the page token into the API call. So this is our resource URI. Now to make use of this, let's see how easy it is to use. So from our REST-based service class, we created some helper methods. Let me just say my var result is equal to await get async. So we created this get async, and what type of data do we want to get back? So this API is going to return to us video search result, and all we need to do is we need to pass our resource URI. That's it. As simple as that. And then I can return the result. It is as simple as that. Now, one of the things that we can also do, if you remember, this also accepts a second parameter, which is a cache duration. Maybe for the purpose of our application, we want to cache this data. Every time you search, think about this. The search results do not change that frequently unless there are new videos which are being posted, or because of the likes and the number of views that video gets promoted up or down. Usually they do not change that frequently. So maybe we can cache our results for 4 hours. So I'm just going to provide 4 hours. So this way, if I search for the same video within 4 hours, it will come over here, it will try to get it, but then based on the implementation that we have, it will check that we have already cached this. Let's go back to the services. So this is where we are checking that if we have cached it and the cache is still valid, cache data is still valid and not expired, we will return this immediately. Or consider, let's say you disconnect from the internet. Rather than showing nothing on the screen, it is still better, at least if we show the data which was there in the cache. Maybe it was 5 days old, does not matter. So this is the advantage of creating this base class. So our actual implementation becomes very easy. Now, as and when we implement more methods, or as and when you build more applications, this will become very, very useful for you. So I think, yes, now my battery is also telling me that my machine is going to go off very soon. So let's stop here for today, and we will continue next time. Do let me know in the comments below if you have any feedback, you want to see something, or you have anything that could have been done differently, any suggestion. Reach out to me on Twitter or leave a comment in this video. So see you all next time. Have a good day.